I always thought safety was a quiet rhythm of paid bills and school drop-offs. My sister, Audrey, preferred chaos wrapped in bright paper when she whisked my son away to Miami for a surprise adventure. I swallowed my doubt to be the agreeable sibling, but 3 days later, staring at a notification for a $5,000 charge on a credit card I never applied for, I realized she had not just taken my child on vacation. She was spending a future that belonged to me. The silence in my kitchen was something I had bought and paid for, hour by painful hour, over the last 3 years. It was 6 in the evening on a Tuesday. The kind of boring, gray time frame that used to make my skin crawl when I was 20, but now, in my early 30s, felt like the greatest luxury in the world. The dishwasher hummed a low, rhythmic thrumming sound against the cabinets. My son, Leo, was at the table, his head bent over a worksheet about the life cycle of a frog, his pencil scratching against the paper with a focused intensity that made my chest ache with pride. We were safe, we were boring, we were stable. I stirred the marinara sauce on the stove, watching the steam rise and vanish into the vent hood. It had taken me 2 years to get my credit score back to a respectable number after the divorce, 2 years to stop flinching when the phone rang after 9 at night, and 2 years to convince myself that I was allowed to breathe without asking for permission. My ex-husband was a chaotic memory, a storm that had passed, leaving only debris that I had meticulously swept away. I had built a fortress of routine around Leo. Dinner at 6:30, bath at 7:30, reading time at 8, lights out at 8:30. It was a grid, a structure, a safety net. Then the doorbell rang. It was not a polite, tentative ring. It was a sustained, demanding press, followed by a rhythmic knocking that rattled the glass pane in the center of the door. I froze. The wooden spoon dripping red sauce onto the ceramic stovetop. Leo looked up, his eyes wide, the frog life cycle forgotten. "Mom?" he asked. "It is okay," I said. Though my pulse had already jumped, "It is probably just a package." I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the door. Checking the peephole, the fisheye lens distorted the face on the other side, but there was no mistaking the bright, electric blue coat or the manicured hand pressed against the wood. Audrey. I opened the door, and my sister spilled into the hallway like a burst of confetti. She brought the cold air with her, along with the scent of expensive vanilla perfume and something sharper. Like hairspray and adrenaline, she was smiling. That wide, camera-ready smile that had gotten her out of speeding tickets and into VIP sections since she was 16. "Surprise!" she screamed, dropping 2 massive hardshell suitcases onto my hardwood floor with a deafening clatter. "Audrey?" I stared at her, then at the bags. "What is going on?" She bypassed me completely, marching into the kitchen with her arms open. "Leo, look at you. You have grown a foot since Christmas." Leo slid off his chair, grinning. Aunt Audrey was the fun one. Aunt Audrey brought candy she was not supposed to bring and let him stay up late to watch movies I had vetoed. She was the glitter to my glue. "Hey, Aunt Audrey," Leo said, letting her engulf him in a hug. I stood in the doorway, my arms crossed, feeling the familiar prickle of irritation mixed with a protective instinct I could never quite turn off. Audrey looked good. She always looked good. Her hair was a glossy sheet of blonde, her makeup flawless, her outfit coordinated down to the boots, but there was a frantic energy vibrating under her skin, a tremor in her hands as she pulled away from Leo. "Pack a bag, buddy," she announced, clapping her hands. "We are going to Miami." The room went dead silent. The hum of the dishwasher seemed to grow louder. "What?" I asked, stepping fully into the kitchen. "Miami." Audrey spun around to face me, her eyes sparkling. Sunshine, beaches, ocean drives. I have it all planned. A sister-nephew bonding trip, just for a few days. The weather here is depressing. Lydia, look at it outside. It is pitch black and it is not even 7 o'clock. We need vitamin D. We need memories. I looked at Leo. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hope. He looked from Audrey to me, waiting for the verdict. "Audrey," I said, keeping my voice low and level, "can I speak to you in the living room for a second?" "Leo." "Go find your sneakers," Audrey said, winking at him, "just in case Mom says yes." Leo scrambled out of the room, his socks sliding on the floor. I watched him go, then turned to my sister. My heart was hammering a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. "You cannot just show up here and promise him a trip to Miami," I hissed. "He has school. I have work. We have a routine. Routine is just a fancy word for a rut." "Lydia," she said, leaning back against the counter and picking an apple from the fruit bowl. She tossed it in the air and caught it. "Look, I know you are obsessed with your schedule. I get it. You are the responsible one. You are the rock. But he is a kid. When was the last time he saw the ocean? The real ocean. Not that gray sludge down at the Jersey shore? That is not the point." I said, "You did not ask me. You cannot just spring a flight on a child. I am asking you now," she said, her smile faltering just a fraction. "Come on. Lids, I have had a really good month. My boutique is finally turning a corner. I have some extra cash, and I want to do something nice for my favorite nephew. Is that a crime? You act like I'm trying to kidnap him." I rubbed my temples. It was not that I thought she would kidnap him. It was just that Audrey's version of reality often had holes in it. The boutique she mentioned had been failing for 2 years, or at least that was what our mother had whispered to me last Thanksgiving. Audrey lived in a world of high highs and subterranean lows, and I had spent the better part of my 20s bailing her out of the lows. "Where would you stay?" I asked, shifting into practical mode. This was my defense mechanism. If I could find a flaw in the logistics, I could say no without looking like the villain. "The Fontainebleau," she said instantly, or, well, right next to it, a stunning boutique hotel. I got a suite, ocean view, 2 beds, a pool that looks like a lagoon. "Let me see the confirmation," I said. Audrey rolled her eyes. A gesture so familiar it made me feel 12 years old again. "You are such a lawyer, even though you are an actuary. Here." She dug into her oversized tote bag, which I noticed was new, some designer brand I recognized from magazines, and pulled out a thick, glossy folder. She handed it to me. Inside, there were printouts, pictures of a pool, a flight itinerary showing a departure time of 8 in the morning the next day, a list of activities, a boat tour, a visit to a sea aquarium, a jungle island excursion. It looked impressive. It looked expensive. "This flight leaves tomorrow morning." I said, "Audrey, this is insane. It is spontaneous," she corrected, "and I already cleared it." "Cleared it with who?" I asked. "With you," she said. I frowned, looking up from the papers. "What are you talking about?" "Last week," she said, taking a bite of the apple, "at Mom's birthday dinner. We were talking about how stressed you have been, and I said I should take Leo for a few days so you could decompress. Maybe go to a spa or just sleep in. You said, and I quote, 'That sounds like heaven. Audrey, make it happen.'" I stared at her. The dinner last week had been the usual Watson family circus. My mother complaining about the neighbors. My father watching football at full volume. 3 different conversations happening at once. I remembered being tired. I remembered drinking 2 glasses of wine, which was my limit. I remembered Audrey sitting next to me, showing me photos on her phone, talking a mile a minute. I never agreed to Miami. I said, I might have said a break sounded nice, but I never authorized a flight. "You signed the permission form," she said casually. I blinked. I did what? She reached into the folder again and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a standard travel consent form, the kind you download off the internet. It gave Audrey Watson permission to travel with Leo Watson for the dates listed. At the bottom, in blue ink, was my signature. I stared at the loop of the L and the sharp cross of the T. It was definitely my handwriting. I felt a cold prickle of confusion at the base of my neck. I looked at the date next to the signature. It was dated last Sunday. I don't remember signing this. I murmured, "Lids. You were halfway through a story about your boss, and you were distracted, Audrey said, laughing lightly. I handed it to you on a clipboard with Mom's medical paperwork. Remember she was making everyone sign that health proxy thing? I slipped this in because I wanted to surprise Leo and I didn't want you to overthink it and say no. You signed it. You trusted me. I looked at the signature again. It looked rushed. I vaguely remembered the clipboard. I remembered a stack of papers being passed around the table between the salad and the roast chicken. Mom had been badgering us about her living will. Had I just signed whatever was put in front of me? I felt a wave of nausea. It was a lapse, a small, terrifying lapse in my fortress. This feels fast. Audrey, I said, but my voice was losing its edge. The evidence was right there. I had signed it. If I said no now, after signing it, after she had bought the tickets, after she had told Leo, I would be the unstable one. I would be the gaslighting mother who reneged on promises. You never let him do anything fun, Audrey said softly. Her voice dropped the defensive tone and became sweet, almost pitying. Look at him, Lydia. He lives by a stopwatch. Let him be a kid for 4 days. I will text you every hour. I will FaceTime you every night. I swear on my life, I will bring him back sunburned and happy on Sunday night. I looked toward the hallway. Leo was standing there, holding his favorite sneakers. He wasn't saying anything, which was worse than begging. He was just watching me, his small hands gripping the shoes, his eyes wide with that desperate, silent plea only children can master. He needed this. Maybe I needed this. Maybe I was holding on too tight because I was terrified that if I let go, the world would swallow us whole again. Fine, I breathed out. Leo screamed. It was a high, piercing sound of victory. He dropped the sneakers and ran at Audrey, tackling her legs. She laughed. A bright, triumphant sound that bounced off the walls of my quiet kitchen. Go pack, she shouted. Swim trunks, sunglasses, no homework allowed. I watched them, feeling a smile stretch across my face. But it felt thin, like paper that might tear. I looked down at the itinerary in my hand. It was just a trip. It was just Miami. People took their nephews to Miami all the time. The next morning was a blur of zipped zippers and rushed breakfasts. I drove them to the airport because I insisted on seeing them to the security checkpoint. Audrey was wearing oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed straw hat, looking like a movie star in disguise. Leo was bouncing on the balls of his feet, his small backpack looking enormous against his frame. I knelt down in front of him outside the terminal. The air smelled of jet fuel and exhaust. Okay, listen to me, I said, buttoning his jacket even though it was warm. You listen to Aunt Audrey. You hold her hand in the airport. You do not talk to strangers. And you call me tonight before you go to sleep. Promise? I promise. Mom, he said. He sounded impatient, his eyes already tracking the airplanes taking off in the distance. I pulled him into a hug. I squeezed him tighter than I meant to, inhaling the smell of his shampoo and the faint, milky scent of his skin. He felt solid and real. Letting him go felt like pulling a rib out of my own chest. I love you, I whispered. Love you too. Mom, he said, wiggling free. Audrey put a hand on my shoulder. She squeezed it. I will take care of him. Lids, stop worrying. Go home. Take a bath. Drink a glass of wine. We are going to have a blast. She grabbed Leo's hand and they turned toward the sliding glass doors. I watched them walk away. Audrey walked with a confident stride, her heels clicking on the pavement. Leo skipped to keep up. They looked like a picture from a magazine advertisement for happy families. I waited until they were through the doors and lost in the crowd of travelers. Then I got back in my car. The silence inside the vehicle was heavy. I gripped the steering wheel, staring at the terminal building, fighting the urge to run inside and drag him back. It is just 4 days. I told myself aloud. It is just 4 days. I drove to work. I sat at my desk. I stared at spreadsheets. The numbers usually calmed me, their predictability a balm for my anxiety. But today they swam before my eyes. I checked my phone every 10 minutes. At 11 in the morning. I got a text from Audrey. Landed. Getting the rental car. Leo is hungry. Getting tacos. A photo followed. Leo holding a taco the size of his head, grinning, palm trees in the background. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 5 hours. They were there. They were safe. I was being paranoid. I went home at 5. The house was empty. The silence was different now. It wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. I walked into Leo's room to tidy up. His bed was unmade. The duvet twisted from his excitement that morning. I picked up a sock from the floor. I went to his desk to put away the frog worksheet. That was when I noticed the gap. His tablet was gone. I frowned. I had explicitly told him not to bring it. I wanted him to engage with the world, not bury his face in a screen. But more importantly, the tablet was connected to my cloud account. It was how I could track his location if I needed to, and how I could message him directly without going through Audrey. I checked the charging station in the kitchen. The cord was there, dangling uselessly. The device was gone. Audrey. She must have packed it while I was in the shower. I could hear her voice in my head. He will need entertainment on the plane. Lydia. Don't be a Luddite. It annoyed me. It was a small boundary violation, typical of her, but it also cut the direct line I had to my son. Now, everything had to go through Audrey's phone. I made myself a salad for dinner and ate it standing over the sink. I felt restless. I cleaned the counters. I organized the spice rack. I waited for the call. At 8 o'clock. My phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. It was a video message. I tapped play. The video was chaotic. It was shot selfie style by Audrey. She was in a convertible, wind whipping her hair across her face. The sun was setting behind her, painting the sky in violent streaks of orange and purple. Music was blasting, something heavy on the bass. A pop song I didn't recognize. Say hi to Mom! Audrey shouted over the wind. She panned the camera to the passenger seat. Leo was there, wearing sunglasses that were too big for him, holding a bag of chips. He waved, his mouth full. Hi, Mom. We are in a convertible. We are heading to the hotel, Audrey yelled, laughing. Love you. The video ended. I watched it again. They looked happy. Leo looked thrilled. But something nagged at me. I played it a third time, pausing it frame by frame. Audrey was holding the phone with her left hand, in her right hand. Resting on the center console near the gear shift was a small packet. It looked like a hotel keycard folder. I zoomed in. The image was grainy. There was a logo on the folder. It was a blue wave with a gold sun. But just as the camera angle shifted, Audrey's hand seemed to move, almost reflexively, covering the logo with her fingers. It was a quick, jerky motion. I frowned. Why cover the logo? Maybe she didn't. Maybe she was just shifting gears. I closed the video and dialed Audrey's number. It rang, and rang, and rang. Finally, it clicked over. Hello? Audrey's voice was loud, distorted. There was a lot of background noise. Voices, clinking glass, music. It sounded like she was in a bar or a busy restaurant. Audrey, I said, you said you would call. Lydia, she shouted. Hey, sorry, we just got checked in and the reception here is terrible. Literally one bar. It is a nightmare. Where is Leo? I asked. Put him on. He is in the bathroom, she said, washing his hands. We are about to order dinner. He is having a blast. Lids, seriously, he loves the pool. The pool? It is 8:30. It is dark. Night swimming, she said breezily. It is lighted. It is totally safe. Look, I can barely hear you. The signal keeps cutting out. I will text you later, okay? Wait, Audrey, what is the name of the hotel again? The itinerary said, crackle, static. I am losing you, she yelled. Text you later. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. My reflection in the dark kitchen window looked pale and pinched. Bad reception? In Miami? In a major city? I opened the itinerary she had given me. The Ocean View Boutique Hotel Spa. I typed the name into a search engine. The website popped up. It looked lovely. Crisp white linens. A rectangular pool. I looked at the logo on the website. It was a green palm tree. I went back to the video. I paused it on the glimpse of the keycard packet before her hand covered it. Blue wave, gold sun. It was not the same logo. I felt a cold drop of unease in my stomach. Why would she lie about the hotel? Maybe they got bumped? Maybe overbooked? I called the Ocean View Boutique Hotel Spa. Ocean View, how may I direct your call? A pleasant voice asked. Hi, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm checking to see if a guest has checked in. Audrey Watson, or possibly under Lydia Watson, or Leo Watson. There was a pause. The clicking of a keyboard. I am sorry, ma'am. I have no reservation under the name Watson for this week. Are you sure? I asked, my grip on the phone tightening. Maybe she just checked in? Within the last hour? I show no arrivals for a Watson today. The clerk said, would you like me to check a different spelling? No. I said, thank you. I hung up. I stood in the center of my kitchen. The dishwasher had stopped. The house was completely silent. They were in Miami. I had seen the palm trees. I had seen the convertible. But they were not where she said they were. I texted Audrey, called the hotel. They have no record of you. Where are you? 5 minutes passed. 10. 3 dots appeared. OMG. So annoying, came the reply. They overbooked us. Can you believe it? Total nightmare. We had to scramble to find another place down the street. It is actually nicer. Sorry, forgot to tell you in the madness. Leo is asleep. Long day. Call you in the morning. I stared at the text. It was plausible. Hotels overbooked. Plans changed. Audrey was chaotic. Of course she would forget to tell me the most important detail, but the feeling in my stomach didn't go away. It felt like a stone, heavy and cold. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the window pane. I imagined Leo in a strange bed, in a strange room, with a woman who loved him but treated truth like a suggestion. I finally drifted off around 2 a.m. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing rapidly against the nightstand. I fumbled for it. My eyes bleary. It was 7:15. There were 3 notifications on the screen. The first was an email from my primary email provider. Security alert. New sign-in on Mac device. Location, Miami, Florida. The second was from my bank. Alert. Unusual login attempt detected. The third was a notification from a credit monitoring service I had subscribed to years ago and almost forgotten about. New inquiry alert. A hard credit inquiry has been posted to your file. I sat up, the sheets pooling around my waist. The morning light was gray and weak. A Mac device. I didn't own a Mac. Audrey did. I unlocked my phone and opened the email. The login had happened at 3 a.m. Why was she logging into my email at 3 a.m? And then the bank alert. My heart began to race, a frantic gallop against my ribs. I opened the banking app. My password didn't work. Incorrect password. Please try again. I typed it again, carefully. Incorrect password. I felt a flush of heat rise up my neck. I went to the forgot password link. It asked me to verify my identity via a code sent to my email, but she was in my email. I scrambled out of bed, running to my laptop in the living room. I flipped it open, my fingers trembling as I typed. I managed to get into my email. Thank God I had 2-factor authentication set to my phone, not just the backup email. I saw the activity. Someone had been in there for 20 minutes. They had searched for bank, tax returns, pay stubs. I froze. Why would Audrey need my tax returns? And then the memory hit me. The clipboard, the dinner at Mom's house, the noise, my father shouting at the TV, Audrey sliding the clipboard in front of me, just the travel thing. Lids, sign here. But there had been other papers under it. I remembered lifting the corner of the top sheet because it was crooked. I had seen a glimpse of a second page. Dense text, small print. I hadn't read it. I had just assumed it was part of Mom's medical proxy stuff, or maybe a duplicate of the travel form. I closed my eyes, trying to visualize the page. It hadn't looked like a medical form. It had columns. It had looked legal, and I had signed the bottom of the stack. I looked at the credit inquiry notification. Brightwave Coast Media LLC. I didn't know who that was, but they had just run a credit check on me. I picked up my phone and dialed Audrey again. It went straight to voicemail. I dialed again. Voicemail. I opened the text thread. Audrey, pick up the phone. Now. Audrey, why are you logging into my bank account? Call me or I'm calling the police. I waited. The silence of the house was no longer a luxury. It was a threat. My son was 1,000 miles away with a woman who had just stolen my password. And for the first time in years, I didn't know if he was safe. I didn't know where he was. And I realized, with a sickening clarity that made my knees weak, that the trip wasn't a vacation. It was a getaway. And I was the one paying for it. My phone sat on the kitchen island like an unexploded bomb. I had called Audrey 19 times in the last hour. 19 times. The call had gone to voicemail. And 19 times. I had hung up without leaving a message. My thumb hovering over the red button as a fresh wave of nausea rolled through me. Finally, a text came through. So sorry. Phone died, and we were on the boat. Leo is having the best time. He is eating a giant pretzel right now. We'll call later when we get back to the room. I typed back immediately, my fingers hitting the glass screen hard enough to make a dull tapping sound. Send me the address of the hotel. Send me a picture of Leo holding today's newspaper. Call me right now. The response was instantaneous, accompanied by a string of sun and wave emojis. Relax. Lids. You are spiraling. We are safe. Address is Ocean Drive, right near the clock tower. You know the one. He is too busy to talk. Having way too much fun. It was not an address. It was a landmark. It was a deflection. I stared at the screen, the cheerful blue bubble mocking the cold dread settling in my chest. She was ghosting me while pretending to communicate. It was a specific kind of torture Audrey had perfected over years of dodging debt collectors and angry landlords. The art of being responsive without ever actually answering the question. I needed to anchor myself in facts. Audrey was a master of smoke, so I needed to find the fire. I looked at the clock. It was 8:30 in the morning. Leo's school would be open. I dialed the main office number. The familiar voice of Mrs. Gable, the school secretary, answered on the second ring. Lincoln Elementary. Mrs. Gable speaking. Hi, Mrs. Gable. It is Lydia Watson, Leo's mom. Oh, good morning. Lydia, I hope you are holding up okay. I know how quiet the house feels when they are away. I froze. My hand gripped the edge of the counter. What do you mean, when they are away? Well, with Leo being gone for the week, she said brightly. I have to say, it is so wonderful that you are taking him for that cultural experience. I marked it down as an educational excused absence, just like you asked. The air in the kitchen seemed to thin out, making it hard to breathe. I did not ask for that. Mrs. Gable, I did not call you. You did not call. No, she said, sounding confused. You submitted the digital request form through the portal. I got it on Monday. Signed by you. It said, Family Cultural Travel Opportunity, and listed the dates. Monday. That was the day before Audrey showed up at my door. She had planned this. She had logged into my parent portal. My password was likely the same as my old Netflix one she still mooched off of, and she had cleared the path so no truancy officer would come looking. Can you send me a copy of that request? I asked, my voice trembling. Yes, of course. Mrs. Gable said, her tone shifting to concern. Is everything all right, Lydia? There has been a misunderstanding, I said, forcing the words out. But yes, please send it. I hung up and paced the length of my kitchen. This was not a whim. This was not a spontaneous anti-trip. This was a premeditated extraction. She had covered her tracks before she even packed the car. I went to my laptop. The screen was still glowing with the bank login page I'd been staring at earlier. I needed to go deeper, if she had accessed the school portal and my email. What else had she touched? I pulled up my credit monitoring service. The hard inquiry alert was still there, a red flag on the dashboard. Brightwave Coast Media LLC. I clicked on the details. The inquiry was for a business line of credit. My stomach turned over. A business line of credit? In my name? I navigated to the identity theft section of the site. I saw a notification for a new address associated with my profile. A P.O. box in Miami. It had been added 3 days ago. I felt a scream building in my throat, a primal, terrified sound, but I swallowed it down. Screaming would not help Leo. Documentation would. I printed everything: the inquiry, the address change, the school email that just pinged into my inbox, showing my digital signature, a pixelated forgery that looked enough like my real one to pass a glance. I needed help. I picked up my phone and dialed the non-emergency line for the local police department. A dispatcher answered, her voice bored and tinny. "Police non-emergency. How can I help you?" "Hi," I said. "I need to report. I am not sure what to call it. My sister took my son to Miami." "Did she have permission?" the dispatcher asked. I hesitated. "She has a permission slip that I signed, but I thought I was signing something else, and now she will not tell me where they are, and she is opening credit cards in my name." "Okay, ma'am. Slow down," the dispatcher said. "Is the child in immediate danger?" "I do not know." I said, "I do not think she would hurt him physically, but she is lying to me about their location." "If you signed a permission slip, it is a civil matter regarding the child," the dispatcher said, her voice heavy with the rehearsed patience of someone who explained this 10 times a day. "Unless you have a custody order against her, or unless you revoke that permission and she refuses to return him, it is not kidnapping. As for the credit cards, that is fraud. You can file a report for that." "But she has my son," I said, my voice rising. "She tricked me into signing the form." "That is hard to prove, ma'am," she said. "If she has a signed document, law enforcement in Florida is going to look at that paper and say she has legal custody for the duration of the trip. You need to formally revoke consent. Send her a text or email stating clearly, 'I revoke permission. Bring him home immediately,' if she violates that. Then we can talk about interference." I felt a cold, heavy blanket of powerlessness settle over me. The law was a blunt instrument, and Audrey had danced right through the gaps in the fence. "I understand." I said quietly, "Thank you." I hung up. I felt small. I felt stupid. I was an actuary. I dealt with risk for a living. I calculated probabilities. And yet, my own sister had calculated me perfectly. She knew I would be too polite to cause a scene at the beginning, and too paralyzed by protocol to stop her now. I needed a different angle. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah, my best friend since college. She was the only person I had texted about the panic earlier that morning. "Did you check the metadata?" Sarah's text read. I frowned and typed back. "What do you mean?" "The photo she sent, the one of the taco. If she sent it as an attachment, or if you can save it to your files, check the info. Sometimes the location data is still embedded if she didn't scrub it." I went back to the picture of Leo holding the taco. It was a live photo, the kind that moves for a second when you press it. I saved it to my camera roll. I swiped up on the image to see the details. The map pin dropped. It was not Miami Beach. It was not Ocean Drive. It was Hollywood, Florida, 20 miles north. The address attached to the pin was the Boardwalk Resort and Marina. I zoomed in on the map. It was a massive complex, hotel towers, a marina, a convention center. She lied about the city. Why lie about being 20 miles north? Because she did not want me to know they were at a resort. She wanted me to think they were at a boutique hotel on the Strip. I went to the website for the Boardwalk Resort and Marina. The homepage was a splash of bright colors. A banner across the top read, "Welcome to the annual Coastal Lifestyle Media Pitch Weekend." I stared at the words, Media Pitch Weekend. I clicked on the banner. It opened a schedule of events. Friday, Family Casting Call. Saturday, Influencer Brand Integration Workshop. Sunday, The Real Families Showcase. My blood ran cold. Audrey wasn't just taking a vacation. She was working, and she was using Leo as a prop. I needed to talk to him. I needed to hear his voice to confirm he was actually there. At that resort, and not locked in a car somewhere while she networked. I dialed Audrey again. No answer. I tried a trick I had used once when Leo lost his phone at the museum. I went to the Find My app on my laptop. I couldn't track Leo's tablet because it was offline, but I could play a sound on it if it connected to Wi-Fi. It showed offline, but then a dot appeared. Not for the tablet, for my old iPhone, the one I had given Audrey 2 years ago when hers broke. It was still linked to my family sharing plan, though she usually kept the location services turned off. She must have turned them on for something, maybe maps, maybe a rideshare app. The dot was pulsing, the Boardwalk Resort and Marina. I called that phone number, not her current number, but the old one. The one she used as a backup or burner when she was dodging bill collectors. It rang. Hello? It was a man's voice, confused. Hi, I said, startled. Who is this? This is the valet stand, the man said. This phone was left in a car. A white Jeep. The lady ran inside. Please, I said, my voice shaking. My son might be with that lady. Is there a little boy? About 8 years old? Brown hair? Yeah. The kid is right here, the valet said. He's waiting for her to come back with the parking pass. Can I talk to him? Please. I am his mother. It is an emergency. There was a pause. Okay. Hey, kid. Your mom is on the phone. There was a fumbling sound, wind blowing against the microphone, and then, Mom? Leo. Oh, God. Leo. I breathed out, sinking onto one of my kitchen chairs. Are you okay? Yeah. His voice was breathless, high-pitched. Mom, we are at a huge hotel. There is a boat, a real boat. Aunt Audrey said we might get to be on TV. My heart hammered. TV? Leo, listen to me. Where's Aunt Audrey right now? She went to get the tickets, he said, for the casting. She said I have to wear my blue shirt. Mom, it is so cool here. There are cameras everywhere. Leo, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. I need you to listen. I don't want you to sign anything. Do you understand? Do not write your name on anything. I know. Mom, he said, sounding dismissed. Aunt Audrey is handling the papers. She said I just have to smile. Suddenly, the phone moved. I heard a muffled sound, like a hand over the microphone, but I could still hear the voice. It was Audrey's voice, sharp and hushed. Told you not to answer that. But it's Mom. Leo said, give me that. There was a rustling, and then Audrey's voice came on the line. Sickeningly sweet. Lydia, how did you call this number? That is so weird. Audrey, I said, my voice low and lethal. I know where you are. I know about Brightwave. There was a silence on the other end, a long, heavy silence. You are overreacting, she said finally, the sweetness dropping away to reveal a jagged edge of annoyance. This is a massive opportunity. Lydia, do you have any idea how much debt I am in? This could fix everything, for both of us. For both of us? I whispered. You opened a credit line in my name. Audrey, that is fraud. It is seed money, she hissed. To secure the spot. It gets paid back as soon as we sign the contract on Sunday. The advance is $20,000. Lydia, $20,000. I put you as the partner. You get half. I do not want your money, I shouted. I want my son. He is fine, she yelled back. He is happy. He is staring at a yacht right now. Do not ruin this for him. Do not be the reason he has to go back to your boring, gray life before he even gets to taste the good stuff. Just let me handle it. I will call you tonight. Tell her you are having fun. I heard her whisper to Leo. The phone must have been pulled away from her face. I am having fun. Mom! Leo shouted, obediently. Bye. The line went dead. I sat there, the silence of the kitchen crashing back down on me. It wasn't just a scam. It was a production. She was directing him. Tell her you are having fun. My fear changed shape in that moment. It wasn't the sharp, stabbing panic of physical danger anymore. It was a cold, creeping dread. She was manipulating his reality. She was teaching him that lying to me was part of the game, part of the fun, She was using his trust to build a wall between us. I looked at the computer screen again, the school email, the bank alert, the hotel website. Then, I saw it. A new email in my inbox. It was a forward, but it looked like it had been routed strangely. I checked the header. It was from castingbrightwavemedia.com. It was addressed to Audrey Watson. But the reply to was set to my email address. She must have set up a rule to forward copies to herself, but this one had slipped through. Or maybe she had messed up the settings in her haste. Subject: Final confirmation. Watson, family lifestyle pitch. I opened it. Dear Audrey, we are excited to see you and the talent, Leah Watson, at the check-in this afternoon. Please ensure the guardian release form and the talent exclusivity agreement are signed by the primary legal guardian, Lydia Watson, prior to the first camera test. As discussed, the narrative for the pitch will focus on the resilient single mom and the devoted aunt. We have updated the script to reflect the backstory you provided regarding the father's absence. I read the last sentence again. The backstory you provided. My hands started to shake, not a tremor, but a violent, uncontrollable shaking. She was selling my divorce. She was selling my pain. She was packaging my life, my messy, painful, hard-won recovery, into a narrative for a media pitch. And she was using my son to act it out. And the release form, they thought I had signed it. They thought I was on board. If I didn't get there, she would forge my signature again. She had already done it for the school. She had done it for the credit check. She would sign my name to a talent exclusivity agreement, and legally. I might be bound to it until I proved the fraud, which could take months. By then, Leo's face would be in their database, his image owned by a corporation called Brightwave. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. I was done calculating. I was done being polite. I opened a new tab on my browser. I typed in flights to Miami. There was a flight leaving from Philadelphia in 3 hours. 1 seat left. Economy plus. $400. I booked it. I didn't pack a swimsuit. I didn't pack a beach towel. I went to my filing cabinet and pulled out my divorce decree, Leo's birth certificate, and the printout of the fraudulent credit inquiry. I put them in a crisp, stiff folder. I walked into my bedroom and changed out of my sweatpants into a blazer and dark jeans. I put on my boots, the heavy ones, the ones that made a sound when I walked. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. My eyes were rimmed with red. My hair was pulled back in a severe knot. But I didn't look like a victim anymore. I looked like a woman who was about to burn a building down, brick by brick, if that was what it took to get her child back. I grabbed the folder. I grabbed my charger. I grabbed my keys. I was not going to Miami to storm in and scream. Screaming was what Audrey expected. Screaming was emotional. Screaming was crazy. I was going to walk in there with paper. I was going to be calm. I was going to be terrifyingly, relentlessly bureaucratic. I was going to retrieve my son, and I was going to stop every single piece of paperwork that was currently being processed in my name. I drove to the airport in silence. The radio was off. The only sound was the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the steady, rhythmic beating of my own heart. Just let me handle it. She had said, "No, Audrey, you had your turn. Now it is mine." The airport was a sensory assault of fluorescent lights and rolling luggage. I moved through security like a ghost, my body present but my mind already in Florida. I sat at the gate, clutching the folder to my chest. When they called my boarding group, I stood up. A text came through from Audrey. "Look, I am sorry I yelled. We are just under a lot of pressure. I bought him a new Lego set. He is happy. Please just trust me for once." I looked at the text. I didn't reply. I walked down the jet bridge. The humidity of the tunnel hit me, a prelude to the tropical air waiting on the other end. I took my seat on the plane. I buckled the belt across my lap. I stared out the window at the gray tarmac. Trust her. That was the trap. I had trusted her when she said she needed a loan for the boutique. I had trusted her when she said she would pay me back. I had trusted her when she handed me a clipboard at a family dinner. Trust was the currency she used to bankrupt me. The plane began to taxi. The engines roared to life, a deep, vibrating power that shook the floor beneath my feet. I closed my eyes. Tell her you are having fun. I would not tell her anything. I would show her. The plane lifted off, banking sharply into the clouds, turning south, toward the ocean, toward the neon lights, toward the sister who had stolen my life, and the son who was waiting for me to save him from the fun. The hum of the airplane cabin was a white noise that did nothing to drown out the voice of the attorney I had spoken to only 2 hours ago. I was 30,000 feet somewhere over the Carolinas, pressing my forehead against the cold plastic of the window, but my mind was still back in the quiet corner of the airport lounge where I had huddled with my laptop and a pair of noise-canceling headphones. Desperate for legal clarity before I touched down in Florida, I had found David, a family law specialist, through a frantic text chain with a coworker who had gone through a vicious custody battle the year before. He had agreed to a 15-minute video consultation between court appearances. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his background a blur of law books that offered me a strange, sterile comfort. "Listen to me carefully. Lydia," he had said, his voice tinny through my headphones. "You need to understand the difference between moral kidnapping and legal kidnapping. She took my son," I had argued, my voice cracking in the airport terminal. "She lied about where they are. She forged my signature." "I believe you," David had said, holding up a hand. "But the police in Miami are going to see a biological aunt traveling with a nephew. They are going to see a permission slip, forged or not. That looks valid on its face. If you run in there screaming, pulling a child out of a hotel room, Audrey can claim you are unstable. She can claim you gave verbal consent and are now having a mental health crisis. If the police believe her, they might put the child in protective services until they sort it out. You do not want that." I felt the blood drain from my face at the memory. Protective services. "So what do I do?" I had asked. "You document," he said. "You create a paper trail that proves you are the rational, custodial parent, and she is the one deviating from the agreement. You text her now. You make a clear, unambiguous demand for the child's return. You ask for the address, and you do not scream. You do not use exclamation points. You write it like a contract." Now, sitting in seat 14A, I opened my phone. I connected to the exorbitant in-flight Wi-Fi. My hands were trembling, but I forced them to be steady. I typed the message exactly as David had instructed. "Audrey, I am formally revoking any prior travel consent, verbal or written. I require you to provide the current physical address of the hotel where you are staying with Leo immediately. I require a confirmation that you will not sign any contracts, waivers, or agreements regarding Leo. Please confirm receipt of this message." I stared at the words. They sounded cold. They sounded like someone else. They sounded like the person Audrey had forced me to become. I hit send. I watched the progress bar inch across the screen. Delivered. I waited. The woman next to me was asleep, her mouth slightly open, a romance novel resting on her chest. I envied her. I envied everyone on this plane who was traveling for a conference, or a reunion, or a simple vacation. I was traveling into a war zone disguised as a holiday. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Audrey." I unlocked the screen. There was a single heart emoji, and then, "Stop being scary. Lids, you are acting like a cop. We are literally eating ice cream. Relax." She was dismissing me. She was laughing at me. To her. My legal language was just another one of my moods, something to be managed with a smile and an emoji. She didn't believe I would actually do anything. She banked on my passivity. She banked on the fact that I had spent my whole life cleaning up her messes quietly so our parents wouldn't get upset. But I wasn't cleaning this up. I was documenting it. I took a screenshot of her reply. Exhibit A. I closed the messaging app and opened my banking app again. The fear that had been a sharp spike earlier was settling into a low, throbbing ache. I needed to see what else she had done. I navigated to the Open Accounts tab. I froze. There was a new line item. Sunshine Coast Holdings. Checking. It was a joint account. My name was primary. Audrey's name was secondary. It had been opened yesterday. I clicked on the transaction history. There was a single deposit made via mobile check capture. $50. It was such a small amount. It seemed harmless. But I knew enough about finance to know what it was. It was a validation deposit. It was the money you put in to activate the account so you could link it to other things, like credit lines, payment processors, or production advances. She wasn't just stealing my identity to pay for a hotel. She was building a financial infrastructure. She was setting up a funnel. If this Brightwave deal involved money, it would flow into this account, legitimized by my name, and then Audrey would drain it out the back door, leaving me with the tax liability and the paper trail. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to close my eyes and breathe through my nose. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, dropping suddenly, and my stomach lurched with it. How did she get my social security number? The question was rhetorical. She was my sister. She knew where I kept my files. She had watched Leo a dozen times at my house. She probably had a photo of my passport on her phone from that time we talked about a family cruise that never happened. I needed to know exactly where they were. The Find My Phone trick with the valet had worked. But that phone could be anywhere now. She might have left it in the car. She might have thrown it away. Then I remembered the watch. Leo's smartwatch. We had bought it for him 2 Christmases ago. It was a bulky, bright blue thing that he usually forgot to charge. I had assumed he left it at home because I hadn't seen it on his wrist in the video. But Leo was a creature of habit. He never traveled without it because it had his step counter, and he was obsessed with beating his high score. I opened the tracking app associated with the watch. Searching. My heart hammered against my ribs. Please be charged. Please be on. Signal found. A blue dot appeared on the map. It was not moving. It was hovering right over a cluster of buildings on the waterfront in Hollywood, Florida. I zoomed in. The map labeled the building, the Boardwalk Resort and Marina, Convention Center. It was the same place I had found via the photo metadata. But this confirmed it. Leo was there, right now. The watch was active. I checked the time. It was 2 p.m. The family casting call I had seen on the website was scheduled until 4. They were in the middle of it. I closed the laptop. I sat back in my seat. I didn't feel the turbulence anymore. I felt a cold. Crystal clarity. The anxiety of not knowing was gone, replaced by the grim determination of a tactical strike. I was going to land. I was going to that hotel. And I was going to end this. Miami hit me like a physical blow. The moment I stepped out of the airport terminal, the humidity wrapped around me, heavy and wet, smelling of exhaust and tropical flowers. The sky was a blinding, relentless blue. It was a city of aggressive cheerfulness, a place that demanded you have a good time whether you wanted to or not. I didn't have luggage. I just had my shoulder bag with my laptop and the folder of documents. I walked past the carousel where families were wrestling with oversized suitcases and hailed a rideshare. Boardwalk Resort. Hollywood. I told the driver. The drive took 30 minutes. We wove through traffic on I-95, passing billboards for injury lawyers and nightclubs. The driver was listening to reggaeton at a volume that made the windows vibrate. I didn't ask him to turn it down. The noise helped. It kept me sharp. It kept me angry. We pulled up to the resort. It was massive. 2 white towers rose up from a lush, manicured garden, connected by a sprawling lobby with a glass roof. A fountain in the center of the driveway sprayed water 3 stories high. I paid the driver and stepped out. My boots clicked on the marble pavement. I was wearing a navy blazer and dark jeans, my serious clothes, in a sea of tourists wearing floral shirts, flip-flops, and bikini tops. I looked like an undertaker. I walked through the automatic sliding doors. The air conditioning was frigid. The lobby smelled of coconut and expensive cleaning products. House music thumped softly from hidden speakers. I scanned the room. It was crowded. People were checking in, dragging rolling bags, shouting over the noise. Then I saw the sign. It was a standing banner, 6 feet tall, near the elevators. It was bright yellow with a blue wave logo. Brightwave Coast Media welcomes our real families. Check-in. Grand Ballroom Pie. I followed the arrows. My chest felt tight. like a band of iron was being ratcheted closer with every step. I walked down a long corridor lined with mirrors. I saw my reflection. Pale, rigid, eyes dark and focused. I didn't look like a mom on vacation. I looked like a woman coming to collect a debt. I reached the entrance to the ballroom. There were folding tables set up outside, staffed by young people in matching teal polo shirts holding clipboards. There were families everywhere. Attractive, camera-ready families. Mothers with perfect blowouts. Fathers with dazzling teeth. Children who looked like they had been bred in a catalog. I walked up to the table. A young woman with a headset and a smile that looked painful looked up at me. "Hi, are you here for the 2:30 slot?" she asked, scanning her list. "Last name?" I didn't give my name. I leaned in slightly, resting my hand on the table. "What is this event, exactly?" I asked. My voice was calm, conversational. "Oh, it is the lifestyle pitch weekend," she chirped. "Brightwave is looking for authentic, relatable families to be the face of their new coastal living campaign. We are doing chemistry reads today. It is super low-key, just capturing that wholesome, sun-drenched vibe. Wholesome," I repeated. "Exactly," she said. "Real connections, no actors, just love." I looked past her, at a whiteboard on an easel behind the table. It listed time slots: 2 p.m., the Miller family; 2:15 p.m., the Alvarez family; 2:30 p.m., the Watson family, mom aunt. My stomach dropped. The handwriting on the board was distinctive. The loop of the W, the slant of the T. It was Audrey's handwriting. She had written our name on the board herself. I looked back at the girl. "And what kind of safeguards do you have for the children?" I asked. "Background checks? Guardian verification?" The girl blinked. Her smile faltered. "Oh, absolutely. Safety is our #1 priority. We have a whole team, and all the parents are here, so—" She trailed off, unsure why I was asking. "Are you with a family?" she asked, her eyes darting to my lack of a wristband. "I am the mother," I said. I didn't wait for her to respond. I walked past the table and into the ballroom. It was a cavernous space, divided into sections by pipe and drape curtains. There were lighting rigs everywhere, cameras on tripods, men in black t-shirts moving cables. In the center of the room was a holding area, a lounge set up with white sofas and a juice bar. I scanned the crowd. I saw a woman in a red dress. I saw a set of twins in matching sailor outfits. And then I saw him, Leo. He was sitting on a high stool at the juice bar. He was wearing a crisp white polo shirt and beige shorts, an outfit I had never bought for him. His hair was gelled back. He was holding a bright green smoothie in a plastic cup. Swinging his legs back and forth, he looked fine. He wasn't crying. He wasn't tied up. He was laughing at something the bartender was saying. The relief hit me so hard my knees actually buckled. I had to grab the back of a chair to stay upright. The horrific images that had plagued me for 24 hours, Leo alone, Leo scared, Leo hurt, evaporated, leaving a hollow, aching space in my chest. But as the relief faded, the anger rushed in to fill the void. It was a hot, white fury. He was safe, but he was being used. He was a prop in a room full of people selling their intimacy for a paycheck. And standing next to him, with her hand resting possessively on his shoulder, was Audrey. She looked radiant. She was wearing a flowing white linen dress and gold sandals. Her hair was loose and beachy. She looked like the perfect, carefree mother. She was chatting with a man holding a clipboard, tilting her head back to laugh at his joke. I started walking. I didn't run. I walked with a steady, measured pace. I felt like I was parting the water. People stepped out of my way. Sensing the energy radiating off me, I was 10 feet away when she saw me. Her head turned. Her eyes locked onto mine. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw pure, unadulterated terror. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened slightly, and her hand tightened on Leo's shoulder. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. But it only lasted a second. Before I could even speak, she switched. It was terrifying to watch. The terror vanished. replaced instantly by a blinding, enthusiastic smile. She threw her arms open. "Lydia!" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. She rushed toward me, closing the distance before I could get to Leo. She threw her arms around me, pulling me into a suffocating hug that smelled of expensive vanilla and panic. "Oh my God, you made it," she whispered, hissed loudly in my ear, squeezing me hard enough to bruise. "Play along. Do not make a scene. Everyone is watching." She pulled back, beaming at me, holding me at arm's length. "Leo, look! Mommy surprised us," she announced to the room. Leo spun around on his stool. His face lit up. "Mom!" he yelled. He hopped off the stool and ran to me. I dropped to my knees and caught him. He felt solid and warm. I buried my face in his neck, smelling the gel in his hair and the familiar scent of his skin. "You came," he said, pulling back to look at me. "Aunt Audrey said you were too busy at work, but maybe you would come later." I looked at him. He believed her. Of course he believed her. She made everything sound like a fun game. I stood up, keeping one hand firmly gripping Leo's hand. I looked at Audrey. She was still smiling, but her eyes were darting around the room, checking to see if anyone had noticed the tension. The man with the clipboard was watching us with a benevolent, approving expression. "Isn't this amazing?" Audrey said, breathless. "The whole family is here. It is perfect timing. We are up in 10 minutes. Lids, I got you a pass. We just need to get you to hair and makeup real quick." She reached out to touch my arm. I stepped back. The smile on her face faltered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I channeled every ounce of the cold, hard procedural energy I had gathered on the plane. I looked her dead in the eye. "What did you sign in my name?" I asked. The room seemed to go quiet around us. The house music thumped on, but the bubble of our conversation was dead silent. Audrey's smile wobbled. The corner of her mouth twitched. It was a tiny spasm, a glitch in the performance. "What?" she laughed. A nervous, high-pitched sound. "Don't be silly. I took a step closer. I saw the notification. "Audrey," I said, my voice low and lethal. "I saw the bank account. I saw the credit inquiry. I know about the guardian release. So I will ask you one more time before I walk over to that man with the clipboard and show him my ID. What did you sign?" Audrey's face went pale beneath her bronzer. She looked at Leo, then back at me. The fun aunt was gone. The carefree coastal mom was gone. In her place was the sister I remembered from the bad years, the desperate one, the one who owed money to people you didn't want to owe money to. "Lydia, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You don't understand. I couldn't lose this spot." She didn't deny it. She had signed it all. I tightened my grip on Leo's hand. "We are leaving," I said. "You can't," she hissed, stepping in front of me to block my path. "If we walk, they sue." I signed a guarantee. Lydia. A personal guarantee. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel pity. I felt a cold, distant clarity. "You signed a guarantee?" I asked. Or did I? Audrey didn't answer. She just looked at me with wide, wet eyes, and I knew the answer. She had bet my life on this, and now she expected me to play the hand. The air in the ballroom was freezing, a sharp, artificial chill that clashed violently with the humidity waiting outside the glass doors. Audrey's grip on my elbow was tight, her manicured nails digging into the fabric of my blazer as she steered me away from the casting table and toward a quiet alcove near the emergency exit. "We need to talk," she hissed, her voice a low vibration of panic masked by a wide, plastic smile she flashed at a passing cameraman. She cornered me against a velvet-draped wall. The music was still thumping, a repetitive bass line that seemed to sync with the pounding in my temples. Leo was still over by the juice bar, happily distracted by the iPad the coordinator had handed him. I could see him from where we stood, a small island of calm in a sea of ambitious chaos. Audrey let go of my arm and smoothed her white dress, her chest heaving slightly. "You have to stop looking like you are at a funeral." "Lydia," she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You are scaring people. This is a happy family brand. You need to look like a happy family member. I am not a brand. Audrey, I said, keeping my voice steady and low. And neither is my son. I asked you a question. What did you sign? Audrey rolled her eyes. A gesture so teenage and dismissive it made my hands itch. I signed what I had to sign to secure the bag. She said, Do you have any idea what this is? This is Brightwave Coast Media. They are huge. They do all the regional tourism campaigns. They are talking about a 2-year contract. Lydia, residuals, print ads, social media integration. I stared at her. She was throwing buzzwords at me like confetti, hoping I would be dazzled enough to forget that she had committed a felony. I do not care who they are. I said, I care that you forged my signature. I did it for us, she interrupted, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself and lowered it again. She leaned in, her eyes wide and intense. Listen to me. This isn't just about me getting out of a hole. This is for Leo. Do you know what they pay for a primary family in a campaign like this? It is enough to fund a 529 plan fully. It is college money. Lydia, real college money, not the $50 a month you squirrel away. I felt a flash of cold anger. She was using my own anxieties against me. She knew I worried about saving for his education. She knew I lay awake at night calculating interest rates and tuition inflation. You do not get to decide how I provide for him. I said, and you certainly do not get to sell his privacy to do it. It is not selling privacy. It is sharing his light, she argued, throwing her hands up. He loves it. Look at him. He is eating it up. He wants to be a star. Lydia, who are you to crush that because you are too uptight to sign a piece of paper? I am his mother. I said, that is who I am. I took a breath, forcing myself to ignore the bait. She was trying to make this an emotional argument about dreams and potential. I needed to keep it a factual argument about fraud and liability. Show me the contracts, I said. Audrey blinked. What? The contracts, I repeated. The ones you signed, the ones you are about to sign. If this is such a great opportunity, let me read the terms. I am an actuary. I read risk for a living. If it is legitimate, you have nothing to hide. Audrey shifted her weight. She crossed her arms over her chest. A defensive barricade. They are standard, she said quickly. Boilerplate. Just standard release forms. Then show me, I said, holding out my hand. I do not have them on me. She lied. Her eyes darted to the oversized canvas tote bag sitting on the floor by her feet. The same bag she had brought to my house. They are in the bag. Audrey, I said, I can see the corner of the folder. She stepped in front of the bag, blocking it with her leg. You are being ridiculous, she snapped. I am not going to stand here and let you nitpick legal jargon while we are supposed to be networking. You are embarrassing me. You are embarrassing yourself. Everyone is looking at the uptight mom who cannot just let her family win for once. I looked around the room. No one was looking at us. They were all too busy looking at their own reflections in their phones, or adjusting their children's collars, or scanning the room for producers. I realized then that Audrey's entire world was a stage where she was the main character, and she assumed everyone else was the audience. But in reality, she was just another desperate person in a room full of them. Fine, I said. I will not make a scene here. I stepped around her. Where are you going? She demanded. Grabbing my arm again, I pulled away sharply. I'm going to get my son. I walked over to the juice bar. Leo looked up as I approached, a milk mustache lining his upper lip. Hey, buddy, I said, forcing my face into a soft, warm expression. Hi. Mom, he said, this game is awesome. It has sharks. That sounds cool, I said, smoothing his hair back. Hey, listen, it is getting really loud in here, and I have a headache from the plane. What do you say we go up to the room for a bit? Maybe play a card game? Just the two of us? Leo looked at the iPad, then at me. He looked torn. He was having fun, but I could see the fatigue around his eyes. It had been a long day of performing. Can Aunt Audrey come? He asked. Aunt Audrey has to finish some work down here. I said, But we can order room service. Maybe those fries you like? His eyes lit up. Fries? Curly ones. I promised. Okay, he said, sliding off the stool. I took his hand. I felt a wave of protective fierceness wash over me. I just needed to get him into the elevator. Once we were behind a locked door, I could figure out the rest. I turned to lead him away, but Audrey was there. She had followed me. And she wasn't alone. The man with the clipboard, the one she had been laughing with, was with her. He was tall, with a spray tan that looked orange under the ballroom lights and teeth that were blindingly white. "So this is the famous mom," he said, extending a hand. "Audrey has told us so much about you. I'm Brad, senior casting director." I looked at his hand. I didn't take it. "Hello, Brad," I said. "Lydia is just feeling a little travel sick." Audrey interjected quickly, her voice high and breathless. "She's going to take Leo up for a quick nap so they are fresh for the chemistry read at 4. Brad frowned slightly. "Oh, we were hoping to get some candid B-roll of the reunion right now. The emotion is so fresh. I am not doing B-roll." I said. Audrey let out a sharp, jagged laugh. "She is joking. She loves the camera. Just give her 20 minutes. Brad, she needs to powder her nose. You know how it is." She grabbed my shoulder, her fingers digging in hard. "Go," she whispered through her teeth. "Take him up. Room 412. The key is in my bag." She gestured to the tote bag she had left on a chair near the juice bar while she chased me down. I looked at the bag. "Okay," I said. "I will take him up." Audrey let out a breath of relief. "Perfect. Go. I will smooth things over with Brad." She turned back to the casting director, putting her hand on his arm and launching into a story about my quirky sense of humor. I walked over to the chair. I picked up the tote bag. "Hey, wait," Audrey said. Turning around, "Just take the key card. Leave the bag. I need my phone charger." I lied smoothly. "It is in there, right?" She hesitated. She looked at Brad, who was waiting for the punchline of her story. She couldn't wrestle the bag away from me without breaking character. "Yeah, fine," she said, her eyes narrowing. "Just hurry back." I took Leo's hand and the heavy tote bag. We walked to the elevator bank. I pressed the button. I didn't look back. As soon as the doors closed, enclosing us in the mirrored silence of the elevator car, I slumped against the wall. "Are you sick, Mom?" Leo asked, looking up at me with concern. "Just a little tired." "Baby," I said. I looked at the bag in my hand. It felt heavy with secrets. We got to the 4th floor. The hallway was lined with Art Deco sconces and plush carpet. We found room 412. I swiped the key card. The light turned green. The room was a suite. It was messy. Clothes were flung everywhere. Audrey's clothes. There were room service trays with half-eaten food, empty wine bottles, and makeup scattered across the vanity. It looked like a college dorm room after a party, not a family suite. Leo ran to the TV and turned it on. I sat down on the edge of the unmade bed and pulled the tote bag onto my lap. I opened it. Inside, underneath a bag of pretzels and a makeup kit, was the folder. I pulled it out. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be steady. I took out my phone. I opened the camera app. I started photographing. Page 1. Talent Release and Exclusivity Agreement. Parties. Brightwave Coast Media, LLC, and Lydia Watson. Guardian. It granted them rights to Leo's image, voice, and likeness in perpetuity throughout the universe. In perpetuity, forever. At the bottom was a signature, Lydia Watson. It was a good forgery, better than the one on the permission slip. She had practiced. Page 2. Production Entity Formation. A document establishing a limited liability company called Watson Family Content, LLC. Managers, Audrey Watson. Members, Lydia Watson, 70%. Audrey Watson, 30%. She had made me the majority owner. Why? Page 3. Production Advance and Promissory Note. This was the one that made my blood run cold. It outlined an advance of $25,000 to be paid to the LLC upon signing. But there was a clause in bold print: recoupment and personal guarantee. In the event that the talent fails to complete the deliverables, 12 social posts, 3 print campaigns, 1 broadcast spot, or if the agreement is terminated for cause, the advance shall be immediately repayable in full, plus interest at 12%. The undersigned individuals personally guarantee this debt. Below it were 2 signature lines, one for Audrey, one for Lydia. Both were signed. I stared at the screen of my phone, the image of my own forged name burning into my retinas. She hadn't just signed me up for a commercial. She had signed me up for a loan. She had taken $25,000 of debt and anchored it to my credit score. If we walked away, or if Leo threw a tantrum and they fired us, I owed them $25,000, plus interest. I flipped to the next page. Direct deposit authorization. It listed the account number for the Sunshine Coast Holdings account I had seen earlier. She had set it up so the money would go into an account she controlled, but the debt would land on me. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to put the papers down. It was not just impulsive, it was predatory. I heard the door handle click. I shoved the papers back into the folder and slid the folder under the pillow. The door opened. Audrey breezed in. She looked flushed. "Okay," she said, clapping her hands. "Crisis averted. Brad loves us. He says you have a stoic, mysterious quality that tests well. We need to go back down in 5 minutes." She looked at me. I was sitting on the bed, staring at her. "What?" she asked. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I stood up. "Leo," I said calmly, "go into the bathroom and wash your hands. Use the good soap. Count to 20. Leo looked up from the cartoon he was watching. "Okay, Mom." He walked into the bathroom and closed the door. As soon as the latch clicked, the air in the room changed. I reached under the pillow and pulled out the folder. I threw it on the bed between us. It landed with a heavy slap. Audrey froze. Her eyes went to the folder, then to my face. I saw the promissory note. "Audrey," I said. The color drained from her face. It happened instantly, like someone had pulled a plug. The vibrant, confident woman who had charmed the casting director vanished, leaving behind a scared, fragile creature. "Lydia, I can explain," she stammered. $25,000. I said, "You took out a $25,000 loan in my name, and you put me on the hook for it if Leo doesn't perform like a trained SEAL." "It is not a loan," she cried, her voice cracking. "It is an advance. We earn it out. We just have to do the work. It is easy money. Lids, it is debt," I shouted, finally losing the tightly controlled volume I had maintained. "It is debt until the work is done. And you forged my signature to get it. That is grand larceny. Audrey, that is identity theft." Audrey flinched as if I had slapped her. She slumped onto the chair by the desk, burying her face in her hands. "I had to." She sobbed into her palms. "I had no choice. There is always a choice," I said coldly. "You could have asked me for help. You could have gotten a job. I have a job," she screamed, looking up. Her face was streaked with mascara. "I have the boutique, but it is drowning. Lydia, I owe suppliers. I owe the landlord 3 months of back rent. They are going to evict me next week if I don't come up with $10,000. And the credit cards. I maxed them all out trying to save it." She took a gasping breath. "I tried to refinance the business loan, but my credit is shot. I couldn't get a dime. Then I saw this casting call. Real families. Big advance. It was like a lifeline. I just needed a kid. I just needed a mom." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I thought if I could just get the money, I could pay off the rent, fix the credit cards, and no one would ever know. We would do the commercial. You would get some college money, and I would be saved. I was saving us." "Lydia." I stared at her. She truly believed it, in her twisted, desperate logic. Dragging me into fraud was an act of salvation. But as I looked at her, shaking, crying, ruined, my anger shifted. It didn't disappear, but it sharpened into something colder. It was betrayal, yes, but it was mixed with a terrible, heavy pity. She was a child playing dress-up in a world that demanded payment, and she had tried to pay with my life because she had already spent her own, "I am not your savior." "Audrey," I said quietly. And my son is not your ATM. I picked up the folder. We are leaving, I said. Now, pack your things. Audrey looked up. Her eyes were wide with panic. We can't, she whispered. I am not asking. I said, we are walking out of here. I will deal with the legal mess later, but we are not shooting this commercial. No, Lydia, you don't understand. She stood up, frantic. We can't leave. They have the signed contract. I gave it to Brad this morning. I froze. You gave it to him? Yes, she cried. It is executed. It is done. If we walk out now, they will declare us in breach. They will trigger the repayment clause immediately. They will come after you for the $25,000 plus damages. Brightwave is not a joke. Lydia, they have lawyers. They will sue us into the ground. She took a step toward me. The only way out is through. She pleaded. We just have to do the weekend. We shoot the content. They keep the money. The debt is wiped clean. Please, just do this one thing. For me. For yourself. If you leave, you are choosing to be $25,000 in debt. I stood there, the weight of her trap closing around me. She was right. If the contract was signed and in their possession, walking away was a breach. Proving it was a forgery would take months of litigation, forensic handwriting analysis, and legal fees that I couldn't afford. And in the meantime, the debt would sit on my credit report, radioactive. She had designed it perfectly. She had brought Leo not just because he was cute, but because he was leverage. She knew I would do anything to protect him, but she also knew I was practical. She knew I would do the math. The math said, stay and perform, and the debt vanishes. Leave, and the debt destroys me. I looked at the bathroom door. I could hear the water running. Leo was washing his hands, counting to 20, doing exactly what I told him. He was innocent in this, and she had sold him. I felt a coldness settle in my chest that was deeper than anything I had felt before. I picked up my phone. I'm going to the bathroom. I said, Lydia, please, Audrey started. Do not speak to me, I said. I walked into the bathroom. Leo was drying his hands on a fluffy white towel. Hi, Mom, he smiled. Hi, baby, I said. Go out and ask Aunt Audrey to turn on the cartoon channel for you. I need to make a call. He trotted out. I locked the door. I turned on the faucet to create a sound barrier. I dialed David, the attorney. He answered on the first ring. Lydia? Are you okay? She signed it, I said, my voice shaking. She forged my name on a production contract with a personal guarantee for $25,000. She gave it to them. They have it. She says if we leave, they will sue for breach. There was a silence on the line. I could hear David typing furiously. Okay, he said. Listen to me. This changes the dynamic. It is no longer just a custody issue. It is a commercial dispute mixed with criminal fraud. What do I do? I asked. Do I stay? Do I let them film him to wipe the debt? Absolutely not, David said, his voice hard. If you let them film him, you are ratifying the contract. You are accepting the benefit of the fraud. If you do that, you can never claim it was forged later. You become a co-conspirator in her scheme. You validate the debt. I closed my eyes. You have to get out. David continued, but you have to do it cleanly. You cannot just run. You need to document the rejection of the contract. How? You go downstairs, he said. You find the highest-ranking person there. You tell them, calmly, that the signature is a forgery. You hand them a written statement. Write it on hotel stationery if you have to, stating that you are the sole legal guardian. You did not sign, and you are removing the child. You demand they return the original document. And Audrey? I asked. Audrey is going to panic. He said, she might try to stop you. She might try to use the boy to guilt you. Do not engage with her. Keep the boy calm. If she physically blocks you, or if the hotel tries to stop you, you call the police immediately. But try to avoid that if you can. Police reports traumatize kids. Hotel security is better. They just want to avoid a scene. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked pale. My blazer was wrinkled. One more thing, David said. Get copies. Photograph everything. If they refuse to give you the original, Take a picture of them holding it. We need proof that they were on notice. I understand. I said, you can do this. Lydia, David said, you are the mom. You have the power. She just has a lie. I hung up. I washed my face with cold water. I dried it with the towel Leo had used. I opened the door. Audrey was sitting on the edge of the bed, nervously chewing her thumbnail. She looked up. Hopeful. Well, she asked, are we going to hair and makeup? I walked over to the desk. I picked up a pad of hotel stationery and a pen. I wrote 3 sentences. To Brightwave Coast Media, I, Lydia Watson, am the sole legal guardian of Leo Watson. I did not sign the talent agreement or the promissory note. The signatures on file are forgeries. I'm removing my son from the premises immediately and revoking all consent for his participation. I tore the page off the pad. I folded it and put it in my pocket. No, Audrey, I said, we are not going to hair and makeup. I walked over to the closet and grabbed Leo's backpack. Pack his things. I said to her, Lydia, you can't, she cried. Standing up, pack his things, I repeated, my voice like steel. Or I call the police right now and report the identity theft. You have 5 minutes. Audrey stared at me. She saw the phone in my hand. She saw the look in my eyes. She started to pack. I turned to Leo. Hey, buddy, I said. Change of plans. The fries here aren't that good. We are going to go to a different hotel. One with a better pool. Really? He asked. Really, I said. But we have to go right now. It is a secret mission. We have to be super quiet. Leo grinned. He loved secret missions. I looked at Audrey, who was throwing clothes into her suitcase with shaking hands. She was terrified, but she was still calculating. I could see her eyes darting to the door, wondering if she could get to Brad before I did. I wasn't going to let her. I was going to walk my son out of this hotel, and I was going to burn her deal to the ground on the way out. The elevator ride down to the lobby was a study in suffocating silence. Leo was humming a cartoon theme song, swinging my hand back and forth, oblivious to the fact that he was standing between 2 women who were currently waging a silent war. Audrey stood in the corner, staring at her reflection in the brushed steel doors. Her jaw set tight. She looked like a trapped animal, vibrating with a frantic energy that made the air feel thin. I had the handwritten note in my pocket. I had the photos of the forged contract on my phone. I had the cold, hard certainty of a woman who had run the numbers and realized the only winning move was to burn the table. When the doors slid open, the noise of the lobby rushed in, laughter, clinking glasses, the thump of the bass from the pool deck. I turned to Audrey. Take us to the production office, I said. Audrey hesitated, her eyes darting toward the front desk. Lydia, maybe we should just go get a coffee and talk about this. Brad is really busy. The office? Audrey? I repeated, or I walk to the security desk right now. She flinched. Fine. It is in the conference suite behind the check-in. We walked through the lobby. I kept Leo close, shielding him with my body as if the tourists in their floral shirts were hostile combatants. We reached a set of double doors marked Brightwave Media, authorized personnel only. Audrey swiped a pass she pulled from her bag. The light turned green. Inside, the chaos of the lobby vanished, replaced by the hushed, frantic productivity of a war room. People were on headsets, staring at monitors. A whiteboard covered one wall, listing shooting schedules and family names. I saw a man in a navy suit standing by a window, talking low into a phone. He looked different from the creative types. He looked like liability management. I walked straight up to him. Excuse me, I said. He turned, annoyed. I am on a call. I am Lydia Watson. I said, the legal guardian of the child you are planning to film tomorrow, and I need to speak to your legal representative immediately. The man's eyes flickered to Audrey, who was hovering behind me, looking pale. He hung up the phone without saying goodbye. I am Simon Vance, he said, smoothing his tie. Head of Business Affairs. Is there a problem? There is a significant problem. I said. I looked down at Leo. Leo, honey, sit in this chair right here, I said, pointing to a plush seat near the door. Put your headphones on. Watch your show. Do not take them off until I tap you on the shoulder. Leo nodded, sliding the heavy noise-canceling headphones over his ears. He was instantly sealed away in his own world. I turned back to Vance. I need to see the original contract, I said, the one signed by Lydia Watson. Vance frowned. We have a digital copy on file. The original is with the intake coordinator. Get it, I said. Vance looked at me, assessing the threat level. He saw the blazer, the rigid posture, the lack of fear. He gestured to an assistant. Get the Watson file. We stood in silence while we waited. Audrey tried to speak. Simon, my sister is just... I held up a hand. Silence. The assistant returned with a file folder. Vance opened it. He pulled out the document I had photographed upstairs. Here it is, he said, tapping the signature page. Signed this morning. Witnessed by our intake staff. I looked at the signature. It was the forgery. Who witnessed it? I asked. Which staff member watched me sign this? Vance looked at the witness line. It says, Sarah Jenkins. Bring Sarah Jenkins in here. I said. Vance sighed. Ms. Watson. With all due respect, we are in the middle of a major production. If you have cold feet, we can discuss the exit clause. But challenging the execution of the agreement is a serious accusation. It is not an accusation. I said, it is a fact. I was not in the state of Florida when this document was signed. Vance paused. He looked at Audrey. Audrey looked at the floor. I have flight records. I continued, pulling up the airline app on my phone. I landed in Miami at 1:30 this afternoon. This document is time-stamped 9 in the morning, unless I signed it telepathically from 30,000 feet. That is a forgery. Vance took the phone. He looked at the landing time. He looked at the contract. We accept digital signatures, he said, trying to pivot. If you authorized your sister to sign on your behalf, I did not. I said, I have never authorized her to sign for me, and I certainly did not authorize a $25,000 personal guarantee. Vance looked at Audrey. You said you had power of attorney. I thought I did. Audrey stammered, her voice thin. I mean, we have an understanding. It is a family business. Do you have a power of attorney document? Vance asked, his voice sharpening. Audrey didn't answer. Vance closed the file. Okay, look, this is messy, but we can fix it. You are here now. If you just ratify the signature, sign a new copy, we can proceed. The boy is great. Brad loves him. We are prepared to offer a signing bonus of $500 to smooth over the confusion. I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. You think this is about $500? I asked. This is about fraud, and it is about the fact that you accepted a signature without verifying the identity of the signer. We verified identity, Vance said, his defensive walls going up. We have a copy of your driver's license on file. It was submitted with the contract. I froze. My driver's license? Yes, Vance said. Standard procedure. Required for the background check. He flipped to the back of the file. There, stapled to the last page, was a photocopy of my Pennsylvania driver's license. I stared at it. It wasn't a scan of the card itself. It was a scan of a photocopy. I recognized the grain of the paper, and then I recognized the background. In the corner of the image, barely visible, was a coffee stain on a wooden table. My kitchen table. I remembered when I made that copy. It was 3 years ago. I had created a family emergency folder after my divorce. It contained copies of my ID Leo's birth certificate, my insurance cards, and my will. I had given a sealed copy to my parents and a sealed copy to Audrey, telling her to keep it in her safe in case I died or ended up in a coma. She hadn't just impulsively grabbed my wallet. She had opened the emergency seal. She had kept that folder, waiting for a moment to use my identity like a tool in her kit. She had been holding my ghost in her back pocket for 3 years. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to grip the edge of the table. She opened the emergency folder. I whispered. I looked at Audrey. She wasn't looking at the floor anymore. She was looking at me with a terrifying, pleading intensity. I had to, she mouthed. I turned back to Vance. That copy was obtained from a sealed emergency file entrusted to her in case of my death. I said, my voice shaking with rage. She stole it. She used it to impersonate me. Vance looked at the ID, then at Audrey. He was starting to sweat. Okay, Vance said. We will cancel the contract. We will shred the documents. You can take the boy and go. We want no part of a domestic dispute. Good, I said. I want the originals. Now. I can't give you the originals, Vance said. They are company property. But I will mark them void. You will give them to me, I said. Or I will call the police and file a report for identity theft and fraud against Brightwave Media for facilitating it. Do you want police in your lobby during your pitch weekend? Vance stared at me. He calculated the risk. He ripped the pages out of the file and slid them across the table. Take them, he said, and get off the property. I grabbed the papers. I checked the guarantee. It was there. One last thing. I said, what is the shooting schedule? What exactly did you think I was agreeing to? Vance hesitated. Does it matter? You are leaving. It matters to me, I said. He tapped a key on his computer. Tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock, the boat shoot. What is the boat shoot? It is the redemption arc, Vance said, reading from the screen. The storyline is single mom finds love again. We have the boy and the aunt on the boat. Then we do the surprise reveal. My stomach tightened. Surprise reveal? We bring in the father, Vance said casually. Reunion on the water. Tears, hugs, the whole reconciliation package. It tests through the roof with the demographic. The world stopped spinning. The father, my ex-husband, Mark, the man who had drained our savings account before he left, the man who hadn't sent a birthday card in 2 years, the man I had spent thousands of dollars in legal fees to keep away from Leo because he was unstable, erratic, and cruel. You were going to bring Mark here? I whispered. Mark? Vance checked the screen. Yes, Mark Watson. We have him flown in. He is at the Overflow Hotel. He is signed for the segment. I looked at Audrey. She was crying now. Silent, streaming tears. I wanted to fix it. She sobbed. I wanted to bring him back. I thought if you saw him with Leo on the boat, you would remember the good times. We could be a whole family again. I was going to surprise you. I stared at her. It wasn't just money. It was control. She wasn't just stealing my credit. She was rewriting my life. She had decided that my trauma was just a plot hole she could fix with a production budget. She had reached out to the man who had destroyed me, invited him back into my son's life, and scripted a reunion for a camera crew. She viewed me as a character, a broken character that needed a producer to step in and give her a happy ending. Whether she wanted it or not, I felt a coldness in my chest that was absolute. The sister I thought I had, the chaotic, loving, messy sister, didn't exist. There was only this producer, this manipulator. I walked over to her. You called him? I asked. He misses you. She wept. He wants to try again. He wants the check. Audrey, I said, just like you. I turned back to Vance. Mark Watson has a restraining order against him in the state of Pennsylvania. I lied. It wasn't fully true. The order had expired 6 months ago, and I hadn't renewed it because he had vanished. But Vance didn't know that. If you put him near my son, I will sue this entire company into bankruptcy. Vance went pale. We didn't know. The aunt lied. I said, about everything. I walked over to Leo. I tapped him on the shoulder. He pulled off the headphones. Are we done? He asked. Yes, I said. We are done. I grabbed the tote bag. I grabbed the file. We walked out of the office. We didn't go back to the room. I wasn't going to give Audrey a chance to corner me in a small space. We went to a quiet corner of the lobby, near the concierge desk. I pulled out my phone. I called David. Did you get the papers? He asked immediately. I got them. I said, David, she brought Mark here. Mark? Your ex? Brightwave flew him in. They were planning a surprise reunion on a boat tomorrow. Audrey set it up. David swore loudly. Okay, That changes the threat assessment. If he is in the city, we need to get you out of there tonight. We cannot risk a confrontation with him. I am leaving. I said, I am booking a room at the airport hotel. We fly out first thing in the morning. I am filing an emergency motion for custody enforcement right now. David said, it will go into the electronic docket in Pennsylvania within the hour. It puts on record that she endangered the child by exposing him to a non-custodial parent with a history of financial abuse. It blocks her from making any legal decisions for him. Do it, I said. Gather everything. David said, every text, every email, the flight info for Mark if you can get it. We are building a fortress. Lydia. I hung up. I looked up. Audrey was standing 10 feet away. She had followed us from the office. She looked wrecked. Her mascara was running. Her hair was disheveled. She looked like a ruin. Lydia, she whispered. I didn't answer. I opened my email on my phone. I forwarded the pitch confirmation email to David. I took photos of the whiteboard in the office through the glass door. The one that listed Mark Watson, surprise reveal. Please, Audrey begged. She took a step closer. Just listen to me for 1 second. I looked at her. You have 1 minute, I said. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. We can't leave, she said. We? I asked. I am leaving. You can do whatever you want. If you leave with Leo, the deal collapses, she said. They won't pay the advance. They will come after me for the travel costs, for Mark's flight, for the hotel. That sounds like your problem. I said, Lydia, please, she said, dropping to her knees right there in the lobby. People stopped to look. She didn't care. She grabbed my hand. I will lose everything. They will evict me. They will seize my car. I will go to jail for the credit card fraud. Please, just do the weekend. Just do the boat shoot. If we do the boat shoot, I get $5,000. Just enough to cover the rent. I will never ask you for anything again. I will sign whatever you want. Just don't kill me. Lydia. I looked down at her. It wasn't love. It wasn't for the family. It was the desperate thrashing of a drowning woman who didn't care who she pulled under with her. She was willing to traumatize her nephew, ambush her sister, and sell our dignity just to buy herself another month of pretending she was successful. I pulled my hand away. Get up, I said. She stood up, trembling. Here is the deal, I said. My voice was flat, dead. I am taking Leo. We are walking out those doors. We are never speaking of this commercial again. If you try to stop me, or if Mark shows up, I will call the police and I will show them the forgery. I will have you arrested tonight. Audrey nodded, sobbing. Okay. But, I said, if you stay here and clean up your own mess, if you tell them we had a family emergency and left, and you keep my name out of it, I won't file the police report immediately. I will give you 24 hours to get home before I talk to the fraud department. It was a mercy she didn't deserve. But I did it for my parents. I did it because seeing my sister in handcuffs in a hotel lobby would be a scar Leo would never heal from. Thank you. She wept. Thank you, Lydia. I will fix it. I promise. I will handle Simon. I will get rid of Mark. Go pack your things if you are coming. I said, but Leo stays with me. No, she said. I have to stay. I have to explain it to them. I have to check out properly or they will charge the card. Fine, I said. I turned away. Come on. Leo. I picked up his backpack. We walked toward the main exit. I felt a heavy exhaustion settling into my bones. It was over. I had the papers. I had my son. I had escaped the trap. We reached the sliding glass doors. Wait, Leo said. I left my iPad. I stopped. He didn't have the iPad. He must have left it on the chair in the lobby when we were talking to Audrey. I groaned. Stay here. I said, do not move. I walked back toward the seating area. I saw the iPad on the chair, and then I saw Audrey. She was near the elevator bank. She wasn't crying anymore. She was standing next to Simon Vance. She was leaning in close, whispering rapidly. Her hand was on his arm. She was smiling. That fast, bright, fake smile. I slowed down. I stepped behind a pillar. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. She is just having a panic attack. Audrey was whispering. She is dramatic, but I can talk her down. Just give me tonight. Don't cancel the boat. I will get the kid there. She just needs to sleep. Vance looked skeptical. She took the papers. Audrey, I have copies, Audrey insisted, and I have the dad. If Mark shows up, she won't cause a scene. She is too polite. Just have the camera crew ready at 7. Once they are on the boat, she is trapped. She will perform. Vance nodded slowly. Okay, but if she is not on that dock at 7, you are liable for the full production cost. She will be there. Audrey promised. I know her. She always caves. I stood behind the pillar, the mercy I had offered her, the 24 hours, the silence, the chance to save herself. She was using it as a weapon. She was banking on my politeness. She was banking on the fact that I had spent my life caving to keep the peace. She thought she could wear me down. She thought she could trap me on a boat with my abuser because I would be too embarrassed to scream. She was wrong. I picked up the iPad. I walked back to Leo. I didn't feel exhausted anymore. I felt something else. I felt the absolute, liberating clarity of a bridge burning down behind me. A private agreement wasn't enough. A quiet exit wasn't enough. As long as she thought she could manipulate the narrative, she would never stop. She would keep signing my name. She would keep selling my life. I needed to stop her, and I couldn't do it quietly. I had to do it in a way that shattered the illusion she was building. I had to do it in front of her audience. Come on, Leo, I said. Where are we going? He asked. To the new hotel? Not yet, I said. I looked at the phone in my hand. I looked at the email from David. Emergency motion filed. I wasn't going to hide in the airport hotel. I was going to stay right here. And tomorrow morning, at 7 o'clock, I wasn't going to be on the boat. I was going to be on the dock. And I was going to bring the real world crashing down on their reality show. The lobby of the Boardwalk Resort at 6:45 in the morning was a hive of organized chaos. The sun was just beginning to bleed through the massive glass atrium, casting long, pale shadows across the marble floors, but the Bright Wave production team had been awake for hours. I saw them moving in a synchronized swarm, men in black t-shirts hauling lighting rigs, assistants clutching trays of coffee, and a steady stream of talent being herded toward the marina exit. I stood near the main entrance, my back against a pillar. I was not wearing the breezy linen pants and tunic I had worn the day before. I was back in my travel clothes, the dark blazer, the stiff jeans, the boots. In my hand, I held a thick sheaf of papers, warm from the business center printer. On my shoulder, my phone was active, the speaker volume set to low, with a green light indicating a live line. David, my attorney back in Pennsylvania, was on that line. I am here. Lydia. His voice crackled softly. The order is filed. The police have a digital copy. You have the physical copy. You are the immovable object. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and expensive espresso. I felt a strange, vibrating clarity. For years, I had been the person who smoothed things over. I was the one who apologized when waiters got the order wrong. I was the one who loaned money and never asked for it back. I was the gentle, reliable Lydia. That Lydia was gone. She had been left in room 412. I saw the movement near the elevators. Simon Vance, the legal representative I had met yesterday, was walking briskly toward the marina doors, checking his watch. Flanking him was a woman with a clipboard and, my stomach tightened, Audrey. She looked spectacular. She was wearing a nautical-themed outfit, high-waisted white shorts, a navy-striped top, and a red silk scarf tied around her neck. Her hair was blown out to perfection. She was laughing at something Vance said, her hand resting lightly on his forearm. She looked like the picture of coastal prosperity. And behind them, holding the hand of a production assistant, was Leo. He was dressed in a miniature version of a captain's outfit, a polo shirt with an anchor logo. He looked sleepy, rubbing his eyes with his free hand. They were heading for the boat. They were going to do it, despite my warning, despite the fraud. Audrey had convinced them she could manage me. She was going to put my son on a boat with my abuser and trap me in a scene I couldn't escape. I pushed off the pillar. I walked directly into their path. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I walked with the heavy rhythmic cadence of someone who owns the ground beneath their feet. Vance saw me first. He stopped mid-stride, his expression shifting from distraction to annoyance. "Ms. Watson," he said, his voice tight. "We are on a tight schedule. The light is perfect right now. We can discuss the paperwork after the shoot." I didn't look at him. I looked at the production assistant holding my son's hand. "Let go of my son," I said. The assistant blinked, startled. She looked at Vance. "Lydia!" Audrey stepped forward, her smile bright and terrifyingly brittle. "You made it. Oh my God. You look so serious. Come on. We have a wardrobe change for you on the boat. It is going to be so fun. Mark is already there. He is so excited to see you." She said his name like it was a gift. "Mark." I stepped closer to her. I was close enough to see the heavy layer of foundation covering the dark circles under her eyes. Close enough to smell the hairspray and the desperation. "There is no boat." "Audrey," I said. I turned to Vance. I held up the papers. "This is an emergency custody enforcement order signed by a judge in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania at 4 o'clock this morning." I said. My voice was not loud, but it projected. I had learned how to project in boardrooms, and I used that skill now. "It cuts through the lobby noise like a knife. What is this?" Vance asked, reaching for the papers. I pulled them back. "I am not handing this to you yet." I said, "I am reading it into the record." I raised my voice slightly. Heads turned. A family checking out at the front desk stopped to watch. A security guard near the door took a step closer. "The order states that Audrey Watson has engaged in identity misuse and unauthorized custodial interference," I said, enunciating every syllable. "It grants me immediate, sole physical custody of Leo Watson and restrains any third party, including Brightwave Media, from transporting, filming, or contracting with the minor child without my direct, written consent." "Lydia, stop," Audrey hissed, her smile faltering. "You are making a scene. People are watching. Let them watch," I said. I looked at the security guard. "Sir," I called out. The guard approached. He was a large man with a tired face. "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" "Yes," I said. "These people are attempting to remove a minor child from the premises against the instructions of a court order. I need you to escort my son to me immediately." Audrey laughed, a high, panicked sound. "Oh, this is just a misunderstanding. Sisters, right? We are just having a little spat about the schedule. Tell him, Simon, tell him we have a contract." Vance didn't speak. He was reading the copy of the order I had finally thrust into his chest. His face had gone gray. "The contract is void," Vance said quietly. Audrey froze. "What?" Vance looked up. He wasn't looking at me with annoyance anymore. He was looking at Audrey with pure, unadulterated loathing. "You told me you had power of attorney," Vance said. "You told me the mother was on board and just had stage fright. This says you are facing fraud charges." "I fixed it," Audrey argued. Grabbing Vance's arm, "I told you. She just needs to get on the boat. Once she sees Mark Watson is a liability," Vance snapped, pulling his arm away. "And so are you?" He turned to the production assistant. "Release the child." The assistant dropped Leo's hand as if it were hot. Leo looked around, confused. He saw me. "Mom?" he asked. I dropped to my knees. The papers scattered on the floor. But I didn't care. I opened my arms. "Come here, baby," I said. Leo ran to me. He collided with my chest, burying his face in my blazer. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the small, steady thump of his heart against mine. I closed my eyes for a second, inhaling the smell of the hotel shampoo they had used on him. He was safe. He was mine. I stood up. Keeping him pressed to my hip, I looked at Vance. "I want the original documents," I said. "The ones you tried to hide yesterday." Vance nodded. He signaled to the assistant. "Go get the binder from the office. Now." Audrey stood there, vibrating. The perfect facade was cracking. The smile was gone, replaced by a rictus of terror. She looked at the guests watching us. She looked at the security guard. She looked at the boat waiting outside. "You can't do this," she whispered. "Lydia, you can't." I ignored her. The assistant returned with a thick binder. Vance pulled out a plastic sleeve containing the documents. He handed them to me. I checked them. The forgery, the guarantee. And then, Vance pulled out one more sheet. He looked at it, shook his head, and handed it to me with a look of disgust. "You should see this too," he said. "She didn't just sign you for the loan. She listed you as the co-owner of the production LLC. I looked at the document. Watson Family Content, LLC. There it was. My name listed as managing member. It is a debt shell," Vance said, his voice devoid of sympathy. "It is designed to hold the liability for the production insurance. If anyone got hurt on that boat, or if the equipment got damaged, you would be personally liable for the deductible. She shielded herself and put you on the front line." I stared at the paper. She hadn't just sold me. She had built a trap where I would catch every bullet meant for her. I looked at Audrey. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me, toward the glass doors. I turned to look. Outside, standing on the dock, was a man. He was wearing a linen suit that was slightly too tight. He had sunglasses on, even though the sun wasn't fully up. It was Mark. He was waiting for his entrance. He was waiting for the surprise. Audrey had lined up all the dominoes, and I had just knocked the table over. Audrey's face crumbled. It wasn't a graceful weeping. It was an ugly, contorted collapse. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in like claws. "You ruined it," she choked out. "You ruined everything. I had it fixed. We were going to be a family." I pulled my arm away. "We were never a family." "Audrey," I said, "I was your prop. You don't understand," she screamed, and the sound echoed through the lobby, stopping all conversation. "You don't understand what they will do to me." "Who?" I asked. "Who is they?" She leaned in, her eyes wild, her breath hot on my face. "The investors," she whispered. "The ones I borrowed the seed money from to get down here. They aren't banks. Lydia, if I don't pay them the advance money by Monday..." She trailed off. She looked at Mark outside. She looked at Vance. She looked at me. "Please," she begged, her voice dropping to a whimper. "Just get on the boat. Save me." I looked at her. I saw the sister I had shared a room with. I saw the sister I had bailed out of jail when she was 20. I saw the sister who had held my hand at my wedding. But I also saw the woman who had opened a credit card in my name. I saw the woman who had forged my signature. I saw the woman who had brought my abusive ex-husband back into my life to create content. She had made her choice. She had chosen to gamble with my life because she had already lost hers. "I am not getting on the boat," I said. Audrey stared at me. She saw the finality in my eyes. She saw the wall. I turned to Leo. "Hey, buddy," I said, keeping my voice light and steady. "Do you know what? I heard there is a place near the airport that has pancakes shaped like airplanes." Leo's eyes lit up. "Airplanes? With syrup engines." I lied. "Do you want to go find them?" "Yeah," he said, grabbing my hand. I looked at the security guard. "We are leaving." I said, "Please ensure we are not followed." "Yes, ma'am," the guard said. Stepping between me and Audrey, I walked toward the main doors. Not the marina doors, but the street doors. I didn't look back at Audrey. I didn't look back at Mark waiting on the dock. I didn't look back at the ruin of the life she had tried to build on my back. I heard her screaming my name as the automatic doors slid shut behind us. "Lydia, you are killing me! Lydia!" The sound was muffled by the glass, turning into a dull, distant roar. We stepped out into the humid morning air. I hailed a taxi. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Miami International Airport," I said. As the taxi pulled away, I looked out the rear window. I saw Audrey standing in the driveway. Surrounded by the production crew, Vance was yelling at her. The security guard was holding her back. She looked small. She looked alone. I turned around and faced forward. The hotel near the airport was a nondescript chain with beige walls and sealed windows. It was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. I spent the next 6 hours in a fugue state of administrative violence. I sat at the small desk in the room while Leo watched cartoons on the TV, eating his airplane-shaped pancakes, which the kitchen had graciously attempted to make after I tipped them $20. I called the fraud department of the 3 major credit bureaus. I placed a freeze on my credit. I placed a freeze on Leo's credit. I called the bank and closed the joint account Audrey had opened. I reported the unauthorized activity. I called the police department in Hollywood, Florida, and filed an informational report about the incident, attaching the photos of the forged documents. I didn't press criminal charges yet. I left that hanging as a final lever. But I created the record. I called David. "It is done," he said. "The motion is granted. If she comes within 500 feet of the child, she will be arrested. And Mark? He is still on the dock, I assume." I said, "Or flying back to whatever rock he crawled out from under." "You did good." "Lydia," David said, "most people would have folded. I didn't feel like I had done good. I felt like I had performed an amputation on myself without anesthesia. I felt exhausted, hollowed out, and raw, but I also felt clean. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying Audrey's baggage. I wasn't wondering what she was hiding. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had thrown the shoe out the window. I took a shower. I scrubbed the humidity and the hotel perfume off my skin. I put on clean clothes. We checked out at 3 o'clock. We went to the terminal. We sat at the gate. Leo was playing a game on my phone. I checked my email one last time before boarding. There was a message in my inbox. Sender: unknown. Subject: FW. Assets and clearance. I frowned. I didn't recognize the address. It looked like a burner email. A string of random numbers and letters. I opened it. It contained a single attachment. A zip folder. I hesitated. Then, curiosity won out. I opened the preview. It was a collection of PDFs, emails. They were between Audrey and a generic email address simply labeled The Investors. I started reading. Date: 2 weeks ago. From Audrey Watson. The Investors. Subject: collateral. I have the assets secured. The sister is perfect. She has a spotless credit rating, homeowner's equity, and a child who tests well for media. Once the LLC is established in her name, we can run the production advance through her accounts. If the pilot fails, the default lands on her profile, not mine. I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just about the $25,000. I scrolled down. From The Investors. To Audrey Watson. Subject: Collateral. Make sure the guardianship is clear. We need the child's image rights for the international syndication package. The payout on the syndication is where we recoup the loan. If you don't deliver the signature, we liquidate your position. And Audrey? We don't do payment plans. I closed the email. My hands were shaking. She hadn't just been trying to save her boutique. She had been trading us like stocks. She had sold Leo's image rights for international syndication, which could mean anything from legitimate ads to stock footage used for God knows what. And the investors. The tone of the emails wasn't corporate. It was predatory. We liquidate your position. I looked at the sender of the email again. Unknown. Who sent this? Was it a whistleblower at Brightwave? Was it Vance, covering his tracks? Or was it Audrey herself, in a moment of twisted, self-destructive honesty? I didn't know, and I realized, with a jolt, that I didn't want to know. I deleted the email. I emptied the trash. I wasn't going to be a detective in her mystery anymore. I was writing her out of the script. My phone buzzed. Voicemail. Audrey. I stared at the notification. I debated deleting it unheard. But some part of me, the part that had shared a bunk bed with her for 10 years, needed to hear the end of the story. I held the phone to my ear. "Hey," Audrey's voice said. She sounded far away. There was wind in the background. She sounded sober. Empty. "I am at the airport. I am going to... I don't know where I am going. Not home. I can't go home." She paused. I heard a shaky breath. I really thought I was saving us. Lydia, I swear. In my head, it worked. We were all happy on that boat. Mark was nice. You were rich. I was safe. It was such a pretty picture. She laughed. A wet, broken sound. I guess I just wanted it to be true so bad I forgot it wasn't. There was a long silence. I thought she had hung up. Then, she whispered, "Please don't look too hard at the LLC papers. And please, just take care of Leo. Don't let him be boring. Lids, let him have a little fun." Click. I lowered the phone. I looked at Leo. He was laughing at something on the screen, his head thrown back, his joy uncontained and genuine. He wasn't boring. He was safe. He was loved. And he was free. I blocked the number. I stood up. Flight 402 to Philadelphia is now boarding. The agent announced. "Come on, Leo," I said, holding out my hand. "Let's go home." He took my hand. We walked down the jet bridge, away from the neon, away from the ocean, and away from the sister who had tried to turn us into a story we never agreed to tell. The plane took off, banking over the water. I looked down one last time. Somewhere down there, in the sprawl of the city, Audrey was running. I closed the shade. I opened my book, and for the first time in a week, I started to read, beginning a new chapter that belonged only to me. Thank you for listening to the Miami Setup, a story about the terrifyingly thin line between family loyalty and identity theft. It is a reminder that sometimes the people who know us best are the ones who can hurt us the most efficiently. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment letting me know where you are listening from. I am always amazed to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to Revenge Stories. I have many more tales of betrayal, justice, and the complex, messy reality of human relationships coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Lydia was right to walk away without looking back? Or should she have tried to save Audrey one last time? Until next time, stay safe and guard your signature.